who here could stand up and tell me everything that they know about blockchain? Who feels comfortable enough to stand up and tell me about blockchain? Okay, then I'm glad you came today because we're going to educate you. And there's no better person to educate you than Teresa Grobecker and her COO, Sheila Vegeron. They are the head of Real Estate Consortia. Real Estate Consortia has been in the news a lot lately. I'll tell you just, first of all, how amazing Teresa is on screen right here. You can see her. So Teresa is not only an SEC-registered investment banker, she's also a real estate broker and a mortgage originator. So she has all three of her licenses. She knows compliance. She takes compliance very seriously. And so she has created Consortia with a big, tall order, which is to kind of democratize the real estate transaction, the data about real estate transactions, and make it transparent. And so they're going to tell us all about how real estate is going to be on the blockchain, and it's going to revolutionize our industry, and they're going to tell us everything that we need to know so that we can be educated and be ahead of the game. Is Sheila with you, Teresa?
Sheila and I are both on it.
Okay, great. All right, so that's Teresa, and then Sheila is a broker in Texas, which is my home state. So ladies, I'm going to let you take it away with your presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Teresa. I'm going to share my screen so we can get going.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having us here today. It's an honor. I'm so sorry that Sheila and I are not in person there. I'm eating my arm over here to not be there with you today. We will do our best to make this interactive and hopefully informative to the whole crowd. So Sheila Vegeron, I'm so grateful to have her here as our COO. As soon as Sheila is a legend, right, in the industry. You guys all know her. She helped build EXP from 1,000 to 85,000 agents, and she has 15,000 agents in her downline. As soon as Sheila joined Consortia had adult supervision. It was suddenly a grown-up company and is now just really on track to where we're supposed to be. My name is Teresa. I started the first online real estate boutique brokerage in San Francisco a decade ago, before COVID was cool, before Zoom was happening, and then became an equity partner at a global investment bank. I started my first blockchain company almost a decade ago as well. That went after the entire derivatives market. So I sit in a very funny spot in the world between Wall Street, Main Street, real estate, and now a lot of title work. So in my first blockchain company, I had to read all of Dodd-Frank. And somewhere between 2 and 4 in the morning, I read this clause that changed my life and I think is changing the industry. And it says that there has to be a ledger for every piece of property or asset that a bank or lender owns that's on their balance sheet. And for me, that was very obvious, a ledger that's blockchain. So I filed for the patent for all things blockchain, non-fungible tokens, and real estate back in 2018. This was a gift to the industry. It was an offensive move before China or Russia did this to us. China and Russia and some other countries are a little bit more advanced than us, or have been, in the space of blockchain and artificial intelligence. So after filing for that, I was shoved in front of Bob Goldberg, who is, of course, the CEO of the National Association of Realtors. And Bob said, "You're ours." And I said, "I built it for you, so I'm glad we agree about this." Bob made the introduction to Second Century Ventures, which is NAR's venture capital arm, for-profit arm of NAR. And we went through the REACH program, which is a scale-up accelerator for the industry. So graduated that in 2019. And then some things happened socially and to the entire world. So really paused until the largest firms in the world came to me, the general attorneys, the executives, the CEOs from title, from capital markets, from mortgage companies. They came to me and they said, "Hey, Teresa, this thing that you filed a patent for, tell us about it. Teach this to us," just like we're on this call here. And so this happened last year. And since then, we've really grown the company and it's finally doing what it was supposed to do. I'm going to hand it over to Sheila. Sheila is my translator. She's my interpreter. I speak nerd. Sheila speaks human. So I think of all the things I just said, none of that really makes sense. Sheila, why don't you take it from here? Why don't you tell people what I'm trying to say?
Thank you, Teresa. So thank you so much, you guys, for having us here. I think I always start with the end in mind. It's like when we talk about blockchain and we talk about Web 3.0 and all of these changes coming to our world, what does it mean? Where are we going to end up with all of this? Now, this is what I'm getting ready to share with you is not where we're at yet. It's where ultimately, when you think of all of this actually coming to fruition, where are we going to end up? And the easiest way to describe it is thinking about when you go to buy a car, and especially if it's a used car, what is the first thing you ask for? You ask for Carfax. And that's what we're building. We are building Carfax for real estate. And again, we're not completely here yet. This is in process, but imagine in the future when everything having to do with that asset, whether it's title, mortgage, roto-rooter, plumbing, roofing, anything having to do with that asset is in one place on a ledger, immutable, to where the people who have the rights and permissions are able to view the data about that asset. That's where we're going. So you understand where the industry, and actually every industry is going to wind up going like this because of what we're getting ready to share with you. But we're talking specifically about real estate. This is where we'll eventually end up. So I want Teresa to kind of just dial down for a second on blockchain, because most people, when we talk blockchain, say, yeah, I know Bitcoin, or I've invested in Bitcoin. And I want to make sure before we even, hard stop here, before we go forward, blockchain is not crypto. That's not what we're talking about today. We're not talking about crypto. We're talking about blockchain. So Teresa, I'm going to hand it to you.
You're awesome. Thank you, ma'am. So blockchain is, blockchain is nothing more than a spreadsheet. That's all it is. So who of us in the room have used a spreadsheet before? We're all business people. I'm assuming yes, we've all done this. So sometimes we share a spreadsheet with somebody else. I'll share with Sheila and I'll say, hey, Sheila, can you please edit my spreadsheet? Can you please add things to this spreadsheet? Tell me details of what I'm missing about maybe a project that we're working on. Other times we have a spreadsheet and we just say, I'm going to show this to you, but it's locked. You don't have permission to, like, if I shared a spreadsheet with my kids, I'm like, don't touch it. Please don't touch the spreadsheet. Don't add anything to it. Like, you can look at it. It's a list of your chores, for example. You don't have permission to edit it. So that's what blockchain is. It's a place where we store information. This is a spreadsheet entry into Consortia's blockchain. So basically goes over the who, the what, the when, and how much in a transaction. This is the foundation for Web 3.0. It's to have this moving ledger that takes us into a place where we can share information. So Web 1 was registering our domain names. Web 2 was created for the social network component of what we do and how we live online. For example, if I am going to get in a stranger's car in New York City at 2 a.m. after a few drinks, after a trade show event, and I expect to make it home alive, it's because we have peer-to-peer reputation networks. So there's an element of trust built in. Now that naturally gives way to the peer-to-peer trust that we have built with decentralization of data. So we've all used Google Drive, Google Sheets, or Microsoft Teams. These are all examples of going to a decentralized method of sharing information.
And Teresa, I think something that you and I talk about a lot is that this isn't new. I mean, blockchain's been around, you guys, since the 70s. 3 mathematicians actually created blockchain. They actually originally designed blockchain to do timestamps on data. But a lot of companies, big companies, are already using blockchain. And a lot of people look at us when we're talking and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so whatever out there, but it's actually not. It's really just like Teresa's saying, the evolution. And other ways that we've described blockchain to you guys, because I really want you to understand Consortia is blockchain. Consortia is blockchain for real estate. It is the foundation or the plumbing, or sometimes, Teresa, we describe it as a file cabinet. Imagine you had a file cabinet that you pulled a drawer out, and the drawer is 123 Main Street. And in that drawer for 123 Main Street is all the files about 123 Main Street. That's what Consortia is. We want to make sure we're very clear, because we have a lot of companies that we're going to talk about in a minute that are working with us. But the point of Consortia, of what Teresa and I are building, is the blockchain, or the immutable ledger, or the store of value vault, if you want to call it that, a vault of data, just like all these other big companies are doing for their data on the blockchain. So for real estate, Teresa, if you want to dive in a little bit about how we're doing it for real estate and what that looks like.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you. So my uncle is the top futurist speaker, according to Google. This is his quote. And I actually got to introduce him at NAR's Technology Summit this week. It was the best moment of my career. He was the keynote speaker. Okay, so this is what Thomas says. Innovation happens along the fringes. So this is art. This is Bored Ape Monkey smoking a joint. There are actual ones of him smoking a joint. This is one of the most popular, famous, and expensive collections of NFT art. So this is innovation that happens along the fringes. We speak of innovation with crypto, right? And art. And it's because the advancements made along the fringes don't have huge impact on how we transact business, how we buy our groceries, for example. And stick with that example, because I'm going to circle back to that in a little bit, because things are changing. Okay, so innovation happens along the fringes so that we can test and break things. Even just the history of the internet and e-commerce has a very sordid past that I will not go into in this presentation, but that is where we test and we break things. Okay, so today's use case of NFTs is to take data about a house, because think about it, that photo is nothing more than a piece of data, that photo of art. Okay, so now here's data about the house. We also put a pretty photo on this. So we put a bow on this one. This is a non-fungible token of a piece of real estate. So we're not selling real estate as NFTs. We're storing data as non-fungible tokens.
Yeah, and let's talk about this more, Teresa, because a lot of people think NFTs, like you said, the Bored Ape Monkey or crypto. And when we're talking about real estate, you guys, an NFT, it stands, like Teresa said, for non-fungible token, which means it's a one of a kind, a representation of one thing. So if you went to Google and looked up the name of a property, like an address, and found a picture, an old picture on Google, you could literally turn that picture into an NFT. And it doesn't mean that it's not the picture, it's a representation of something of value that you're selling, which is the property. And Consortia is not an MLS. We are not selling the property. We are the data storage about the property, and the picture we're using is the representation of something of value that's being sold. So like we talked about before, you have the picture of this house, and then we'll show you in a minute when we drill down onto it, we have files underneath this. So we have the title file, or we have the home inspection file, or we have the file with the pictures that you put on the MLS. But do you want to drill any more into NFTs and just the differences, Teresa, or do you want to move on?
Yeah, I just want to say here quickly that we have a unique identifier, to Sheila's point. Like if you Googled a piece of property, you might find the address existing in 6 different cities in the United States. That gets kind of complicated. And what we're doing here is putting clean data in, clean data out. So we've identified the property with a unique identifier. There is a token ID. So every piece of data, as you can see here, has its own very unique and ugly identifier. It's a lot of numbers and letters. And then we can either say that the data is for sale or not. I think a good question that we get a lot is like, who's allowed to write to this ledger? They have to hit the highest level SOC 2 audit protocols. That's an SEC kind of requirement for data and for business processes. So we hold all of our participants to the highest level standard.
Awesome. And One of the things that Teresa and I have been doing over the year is looking at all of the different companies who are interested in blockchain. So one of the things that we're bringing to you today is partnerships so that you'll be able to work with different companies to be able to bring data as well onto the blockchain. Here are some of the companies that we're partnering with. And right now, so Consortia, when Teresa created this, when she founded the company, the word Consortia stands for consortium, because she understood it wasn't going to be one company that just locks up the whole market. It's not about Consortia owning everything. It's about all of us working together to bring the entire asset class into the new world, so to speak, or into the next evolution of Web 3.0. It's not Consortia working on their own. It's all of us working together. So these are some of the companies we're already working with. And we're, Teresa, I don't know if you want to talk for a second about the pilots and some of the other stuff that we're doing.
Yeah, so Fannie Mae asked us for a pilot. We've been at this for a hot minute. So I knew for years what Fannie Mae was looking to do, same for Freddie. And so we reverse engineered it. I'm dyslexic. I think that might actually be like the company's superpower collectively, right? Is like start with the end in mind. I think that's really become the culture, right? And it's because I'm dyslexic. Like I'm going to read a sentence backward. It's amazing that I can actually make words on stage. People are like, how do you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. So we started with the end in mind, figured out what Fannie and Freddie were really looking for, what capital markets want. So that's how we built it. And we also just plugged the realtor into the middle of it, which Sheila's going to go into more here. So our partners going into this are a lot of parts of the US government, let's say that. We are in talks with the Federal Reserve because FedCoin was just announced a few weeks ago, and got an introduction to the vice chair of the Federal Reserve, who wrote back almost instantly. Kind of crazy, almost like they knew what we were building. Chase came to us early in 2018 and said, how do we fund our mortgages through Consortia? I didn't understand what the head of the treasury of Chase Bank was asking me at that time. My nickname at NAR is Turtle because I'm kind of slow. So now I get it, what all this is going toward. FedCoin is rolling out. So basically it's digital currency. It's the US dollar going digital. It's not some new currency. It's what we use today, the US dollar, but going completely digital. So it's really to rival PayPal, Zelle, Venmo for instant settlement. It's to provide banking solutions to the unbanked. So go back to that example where I said changes how you buy your groceries. It's for everyone in the economy, the people who don't have bank accounts, the people who get social welfare. And it's going to be a flood up effect that those people get their benefits through digital currency. That goes to Target, to your local grocery store, every place where people have to buy consumer goods. Also, what they want, what the Federal Reserve wants, is for us to be able to facilitate real estate transactions instantly. So we're also working with a state to be able to close the entire transaction, meaning putting their county records on blockchain so that we can close 24/7, 365 with the Federal Reserve, with this currency that's going to be able to settle 24/7, 365. So imagine this. We've all closed transactions, right? Where we don't know if we're going to make the wire cut off and then make the county recorders cut off. In some counties, they literally only allow 5 closings per day. So this is a terrible experience for our clients. Where do I live? It's Friday at 5 o'clock. Do we have keys today? Do we not? Where do we live for the next week? Oh, I have to take off next week from work so I can move into my house. Or do I live in a hotel with my kids? Where do I lay my head at night? Where am I going to feed my kids breakfast in the morning? So we're trying to eliminate that terrible feeling, consternation of the transaction to do right for our clients. So it takes a consortium, as Sheila is saying. This slide is an example. This is all the companies coming together. And we're just getting started.
Awesome. Thank you, Teresa. So what does this mean for you? Everybody sitting in the audience that's an agent, that's a practitioner. We, as Teresa mentioned, we wanted to keep the agents at the center. So one of the things that I talked to Teresa about in the very beginning when I first met her was there are really 4 different times for an agent when the transaction falls through. And one of them is at the appraisal. One of them is the title work. One is the buyer's third-party financing, and one is during repair negotiation. So when you look at the agent, what do we all want? We all want to have more surety of our closings, because how many of us hold our breath when we put somebody under contract? Doesn't matter if you're on the buyer side or the seller side, you're holding your breath. Is this deal going to close? Is there something that's going to make it fall apart? And so we all would love more surety of the closing happening. We would love to truncate the time, because you're looking at a 30 to 45 day window from the time you put someone under contract. We would love to be able to make more money, be more effective with our time. And so one of the things that I've worked really hard with Teresa on this year is really, let's figure out how to get rid of those pain points in the process as much as possible to make it easier and more truncated, quicker, and smoother for the agents. Oop, somebody's got music playing in the background. So we have created what we call the Wheel of Fortune. That's what we joke. We joke about this being. But ultimately, this is an example of, for you as a functioning agent, the process that Teresa and I have worked to put together for you to help make things easier for you. For example, on the seller side, if you're a listing agent, we have a virtual site inspection company that their product has been approved by Fannie and Freddie. It is an app on your phone that you can do a virtual site inspection of your property, and a home inspector is on the other end on their computer. You're using your phone to walk through the house. They're able to point things out for you and your seller of possible things to be looking out for, to prepare prior to listing the home, of things they might want to consider fixing. We also have a pre-appraisal package with Remote Val that also is a technology on your phone that is a full appraisal grade floor plan. I'll show you a sample in a second. What this does for you is it gives you the ability to truncate the time of your closing, because we all know the appraisal is one of the stickiest points of the process. So if we can pull your process down from a 45-day window to a 7 to 14-day window for you to close because of this helps you be more effective. It helps you actually be a better agent for your sellers, because this process gives everything an appraiser would need in a package ready to go. So as soon as you get a contract on that house, this package gets given to them and they can do the appraisal in days versus weeks or months. So this will help you as an agent. The other thing, jump in.
I would love to jump in here, and you're probably wondering, why does this matter? So appraisers are very sensitive right now. There are a lot of changes that are happening in the appraisal space. For being such a boring and bespoke line of work, there's a lot that's controversial in that space. There's a lot of pressure about racial bias, housing accessibility, tech and technology at the end of the day. So putting these records on blockchain help appraisers trust and able to validate the data that we as realtors, as brokers, give them. So think about that. There is no one closer to that transaction than the realtor, and they know that. So the fact that we can walk in, get a walkthrough scan done in 10 minutes, and then give that to the appraiser, think about what that does to truncate the transaction time. And so it's the blockchain, it's the verification that somebody who's trusted put this data onto blockchain that transforms the real estate transaction.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we're talking to Fannie about, we've met with them multiple times, and we have a variance in right now that our lawyers are working on with them, is that we're asking them, and this isn't complete yet, we're asking them to allow us to do the full appraisal upfront. We can talk more with you offline about what that's going to mean for the industry, but our goal is to be able to appraise the asset prior to you putting it on the market, so that your seller knows what it's valued at, the buyer making the offer knows what it's valued at. You get a pure appraisal from the appraiser, not pressured by a lender trying to get them to hit a certain number. And then there's more details that we can go over with you if you're interested in that. But that's one of the things we're working on with Fannie, is to be able to do everything prior to you listing the property. Also with the title, you're able to have all the title work done up front. So this is all clouds, encumbrances, everything's cleared prior to you listing the property. And then we have a data analytics company that works with Fannie and Freddie right now that we're working with to do an AVM, which is like a guardrail or AI-driven data, to make sure that we're pricing the properties as best as possible prior to listing them. So Consortia, again, is the blockchain. These are just companies that we are working with that want to put their data on the blockchain to be able to have one place for all of the records about the asset. But my goal with Teresa in the meantime is let's fix the process. Let's figure out how we can offer more value to you as an agent, more value to the consumer. Let's fix what's broken in this process. Let's get rid of all the angst and all of the worry and all the stress that we deal with throughout the process, and do it all up front in hopes of closing quicker and making it the process easier. We do have other companies we're working with that we could go through later with you, or we do go through in our course that we'll talk about in a second. We have 3 other companies that are joining us on the buyer side to offer value, more value to the buyer as well. So we'll release that to you guys through our group and our coursework. But ultimately, just so you understand, the whole point of this is that we are working with many companies to bring their data onto the blockchain to fix the things that are broken in the real estate industry. We're working with the government. Teresa is the advisor to the SEC. Teresa is also the advisor to the billion-dollar families. And so she is very tied in on every end of the industry to make sure that we are bringing this in the best way to the asset class. And then ultimately, she and I are completely committed to making sure that you as the agent are tied to the property going forward. And we'll talk about that in a second. So I'm just going to show you a couple quick slides of what the process looks like, just as examples. So this is the old process, house, realtor, contract. Then you layer in our new process before you put it in the MLS. This is an example of the virtual site inspection. It's amazing. This kind of freaked Teresa out when we did this example with her, because the guy's on his computer and she's on her phone and he's zooming in and drawing pictures and doing all this stuff. It's pretty cool. This is what the appraisal grade floor plan looks like. So it comes out as a mesh and then turns into a floor plan, which is within centimeters of the actual square footage of the home. And then this is an example of what the title work looks like. And just so you guys know, this is something that Fannie wants. And if you don't realize this, because of the shift in our industry and sales prices over the last number of years, Fannie and Freddie make up about 90% of the market for them insuring loans. So they are very big players. Their voice is very big. Teresa and I are also working with VA and with HUD and have been asked by the U.S. Department Subcommittee for Appraisals to work with them and help work on the white paper for them. So we're very tied in with every end of the industry, with the government and with the lenders, to help fix this process. And again, our commitment is to you as the agent to help you get up to speed and to help you be functioning in this as everything moves on to blockchain. So I'm going to hand it back to Teresa to kind of get to the fun stuff and show you kind of what it looks like and talk more about the specifics.
Absolutely love it. Thank you, Sheila. So this is an example. This is my NFT wallet. These are relationships that I have with real people who own real houses. These are their data files that I have minted in blockchain. And how this works. So yes, there's the property. Second of all, there's a promise, a very annoying promise that I made to the industry in 2018 when I jumped into organized real estate. And this was at the Real Estate Standards Organization, REZO. They're the ones that standardize all of our data in the industry. So I made a promise that we would put the agent in the middle of this ledger. Yes, it's made for capital markets, but guess what? You, the realtor, the practitioner, you're in the center of that relationship. So this is my agent, my broker token. And why this matters is because capital markets want to be able to look at a map of the country and be able to say, okay, this is how I get in touch with a customer who we need to get in touch with a potential nod, or there's a certified listing that's coming on board so we can see all the data and be able to reference that. Or it's insurance companies that need to come in and see what's happening inside of the property. Who better to connect with a homeowner than the realtor? This is an example of Christina Swires. This is her, this is a sample of some of the properties that she sold. She's one of the top agents in the St. Louis area. So what I love about this map, one, is Christina, who I love so much. Two, she is tied onto the forever ledger of the piece of property. Think about that. Think about the future. When people have questions about a piece of property, they're going to know to contact Christina. She is in the center of that relationship. So her information is here, and she gets linked exactly to those NFTs that are on the Consortia blockchain. This is here for you. If you want to come on and mint your relationships with properties, we want you to do that. The way that I think about this is, if you could go back a decade, if you could mint your entire footprint on Zillow forever, would you do it? Would you do it? That's what this is. And it's meant for the person who has the real relationship. We're not just buying zip codes, guys. And since we're talking about that Z company, Zillow is rolling out a certified listing program. We know that. Zillow has been reading our white papers constantly. I get a notification every time they touch our system. So they're going to do this. Do you want to give your business over to Zillow, or do you want your book of business? They just did a huge deal with, is it Open Door? I want to say it is Open Door. So I know in the family office world that the family office that wrote a check for $500 million to fund Open Door. Open Door and Zillow are about to have 30% of the market share in the next 3 years. Let me slow down and say that again. 30% of market share. So they're coming fast and furious for your listings. I would really like to say that we did whatever we could to give the realtors a fighting chance in this one. So I'm going to put a pin in my soapbox there. And I really like what Sheila's going to show next.
Yeah, I do want to make one point there, Teresa, because everybody sitting in the audience, as functioning agents, we're so busy trying to get the next deal or the next closing or build our business or become a team or just function doing our job. A lot of times what happens is we don't see what's happening behind the scenes, or we don't see what's happening until it's too late. We all remember the day it got announced. For all of us who are old enough in the industry, we all remember when we heard that the data got given to Zillow, that they wound up getting access to all of our data. We all remember that. And then we all remember them saying they would never become a brokerage. Well, then we remember also the day that all of a sudden they became a brokerage. If you do not understand this, Zillow does not want us. As a tech company, they want to get rid of us. What Teresa and I are doing is to hedge against a tech company, whether them or someone else, a tech company getting rid of us as practitioners. Our goal is to work with every one of you to mint you and all of your properties onto the blockchain, so it's immutable and you are locked in on that property, not only to protect against these tech companies and what they're trying to do, but as Teresa mentioned, capital markets wants a relationship with you. Think about all the billions and billions of properties that are sold in our country. They have no idea what that house looks like. They have no idea because they don't have the home inspection. They don't have pictures. They have an appraisal, but they really don't have contact with that person living in that house. You do. So they would love to have a relationship with you and say, hey, Christina, so-and-so is having a problem. It looks like we have data through our AI product that can tell you if someone is going to miss a payment before they miss it. We can tell you that. So if we can call Christina before they miss a payment to show that there's a hardship, we can see there's a hardship. Christina, because she has a relationship with them, can go, Mr. Seller, I'm just checking in on you. How's everything going? You know, I'd love to help you if you're in any hardship. I know that inflation's going up or interest rates are going up or whatever. She can help them refinance their home. She can help them sell their home to move to something more affordable. She can do a cash for keys with them to save them from foreclosure. So this is a way for us as practitioners to keep the last crash from happening. This is a way for us to protect the global economy. Real estate is the number one asset class in the world. US real estate is number one. So this is a way for us to help protect our economy by protecting the asset class, by helping keep people from going into foreclosure. That's what we're working on. So one of the things that happened when I first met Teresa, because I'd been studying digital assets and cryptocurrency, that side of the industry for years, thousands and thousands of hours. And when I met Teresa, one of the things she said to me that really just kind of shook me is it was just starting to get popular where you heard about agents selling homes as NFTs. And one of the things she said to me was, as soon as you as a practitioner, a licensed professional, sell a home as an NFT, it becomes a security. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? She said, well, you know, SEC hasn't put down all their rulings yet. So we're still following all of the same laws, all of the old laws that have been around forever. And Teresa, being an SEC investment banker, she understands how all of this works with the SEC. And so she would joke with me, but I have a slide here to kind of make it very real for you, is our goal is to keep you out of jail. Because if you start functioning in this space, and you aren't doing it appropriately, and literally just in the last month, and even in the last 2 weeks, a lot of articles have come out about the SEC ruling on putting all of this under the SEC guidelines, which means it becomes a security. So you no longer are going to be able to sell homes the way you've sold homes in the past. So one of the things Teresa and I are doing is helping train people on what laws they need to know, how they need to practice, how to protect themselves. And I know this is a funny little card, but it's not a funny joke, that we want to make sure we're protecting not only ourselves, but our industry. We don't want other agents or brokerages going to jail or getting big SEC fines because they didn't practice appropriately. So I convinced Teresa finally to create coursework, and we recorded about 5.5, 6 hours worth of training. And it goes through every single thing you could potentially want to know about operating in real estate on the blockchain. And we are making that available to you guys. We also have a whole network, a whole group that you get to be a part of, a community, and people ask us questions and we post stuff and updates, and we just help keep you up to speed on what's happening in this space so that you know what's coming or what's happening. And we would love to make this available to you guys. We do have a QR code. Hopefully, Carolyn, you guys can show this on the screen, and you guys are able to sign up for the coursework and able to join the community. But this is something Teresa and I train on every week. This is literally all we do, is to work with different companies to bring this to the industry. So Carolyn, I'm going to hand it back to you.
I just want to jump in and say this QR code is for half off, I do believe, of our street price. And then once this is not available anywhere else on the internet. So if you want this, definitely scan this and sign up for the course through this QR code. It's special just for this event.
Thank you, ladies. That was amazing. So I just signed up for the course. I'm going to be taking it in a couple of weeks. What do you guys think of the presentation? It's a lot of information, right? Do you feel like you kind of broke the surface of what this is and see the importance of it moving forward? Do we have any questions from the audience before we let Teresa and Sheila go? All right, so you have the QR code, you have their information. Teresa, Sheila, thank you so much. Can we see your pretty faces before you go one last time? Oh, there is a question. Okay, who do we have? Jeffrey, let me come to you. Hang on. There we go. We couldn't see your face the whole time.
Oh no, we could see each other. I was looking at Sheila. I was afraid, was my hair
Okay, good.
okay?
So you weren't alone. Okay. You had the question, right? Yes. Okay, go ahead.
So awesome presentation. One question I have, I had done some real estate photography in the past. If you're minting these NFTs, what happens with the copyright owner?
Yeah, totally. So we are very cognizant of who owns data. So you have to be the copyright owner of said data, or you have to have some kind of an agreement with your clients that say you have the permission to share this. If you know of people, if you're a photographer or you have friends who have data, we're happy to talk to them and work with them. We do this throughout the whole industry, trying to figure out what data people have about houses, what data capital markets want about houses, and is there a legal way to share this information?
Great. Thank you.
Also, to that point, if you have data, I don't think we touch on this enough, right? You can monetize your data. That is like the nature. It's that pause that I do. If you own data, it's just like art, right? Every time you sell it, resell it, you have copyright, you get to earn residual income on that data. So a lot of the biggest data providers, and we even open this up to agents, you have data about past sales that you actually own in your seller's disclosure. This is your data that capital markets want to see, and it's permissions based who gets to see it. And for good reason. It's insurance companies and it's capital markets. It's to the client's benefit that this information is being able to be unlocked from its silos and then shared. So one, you got to have copyright. If you have copyright, then you can then go and monetize your data.
One last question. Where does the homeowners come in on that? When I buy the house, now I'm generating data, whether it's through my Nest thermostat, through the updates I do and file with the town, and that's then living on the blockchain. Do I have any ownership of that as the owner of the home?
If you're the owner of the house and you want to share data with Consortia, then you own it. Same rules apply. And then you have copyright and you can monetize it.
So why wouldn't everybody want to do that?
I don't know, right?
Thank you.
And it is, by the way, this is a private blockchain. A lot of people think, well, what happens? Can everybody see my data? No, this is a private blockchain, permissions based. They have to be, like Teresa mentioned earlier, a high level audit protocol, type 2 SOC 2 audit protocol. So the standard is so high for security purposes. So when you look at our consortia map, you'll see the house, like if you mint 2,000 properties, for example, you'll see that is minted, but only the people that have permission to see that data will be able to drill on the file on the NFT and open those files. Just so you know, we want to make sure you understand this isn't like OpenSea that you're going to just be out there and be able to see everybody's stuff.
So funny, like I got asked that question by the CEO of the largest credit union in the country. And he was like, why would I not do this? And I was like, I know, right? I was like, my closing line was, I don't know, like super sophisticated. I was flown out like for an event for CEOs of banks. I was like, I don't know, strong close, right? But that's kind of how I feel. Like, why would you not do it?
Hi. One more question. I was looking at the appraisal issue that you were talking about, that Fannie's approving those electronic appraisals prior to the home being listed. And my concern is how do you know what a house is worth before we figure out what the market will bear? Because we're in a market like, 2020, 2021, prices are increasing. How electronically, before a house is even going on the market or sold, can you determine how much it's actually worth? It's almost like you're setting the market before the market's ready to set itself.
So I'm a loan originator, and the banks know exactly what the range for that house is. They're using 5 different data sets to determine the value of that house. the value that's written on the piece of paper, and this is going to like the head of appraisal, like the head appraisers in the country, they prefer this model because then they don't have undue influence. The value is the value is the value. It's already set. So as a loan originator, when I work with agents, and I do impossible loans, by the way, I only get the hard ones. I don't know where the easy ones go, but the only ones that get referred to me are impossible. When I go into an offer with an agent, I look up the AVM source that House Canary produces, Goldman Sachs, the largest lenders in the country use this one. They use several, but they layer them together. I say you stay within this band on your offer and we're safe. If you go outside this, I make no guarantees that I can close your loan. The appraisers are using this exact same methodology. So in San Francisco, you see all these reports in this, well, across the whole country now because of COVID, right? Is it like you have offers that go $100,000 over the listing price? If that agent really did list at the correct price, and then the offer goes 100,000 over, guess what? The bank isn't covering that. That's a frenzy purchase. That's not based on actual data. So the bank says, no, we're only going to go up to what we said the band is, which is maybe 700, 775 on the value. But if you want to pay 900 for this house, go for it. But the buyer has to come up with the spread. And the reason that we think that this process, and so does Fannie and Freddie, think is beneficial, we have total transparency now going into the listing. And we can say, you know what, we know what the banks have spoken, the appraiser has spoken. So now the consumer has a better experience. Now, if the consumer wants to order a different appraisal and they think it's going to go higher, go for it. Like, this doesn't stop you from doing it your own way. Going this direction with Fannie and Freddie, we're aiming to close in 7 days. And in an environment where, so every single loan I've closed this year, the rates have gone up between the time that we locked and the time we go to closing. And I've arm wrestled the wire from the lender to go out for closing. Even though all clear to close conditions have gone out, I'm arm wrestling people. And every single one of my deals closes, thank God. But like, this is a terrible experience. And if we can shorten that time of escrow, there's less uncertainty, especially in environments like this.
So let me add 2 more things to that, Teresa. Number one, that process is not in place yet. Let me make that clear. That is what we have spoken to the head of Fannie about, that we're in the process of writing up variances to their laws and to their 1,300 pages of contract paperwork so that we can do this as a pilot with them. What is approved is the remote val pre-appraisal package. So we're able to get all the data points, all the pictures, and the actual remote val appraisal grade floor plan done today in advance of you listing the property. In the future, once we get everything worked out with Fannie, we're going to be working on doing that pilot for that appraisal upfront. No, that was point 1. Point 2 is that the other thing that we're doing in that pilot with that is that there will be a second follow-up. To answer your question, a follow-up appraiser will look over it. Once you get a contract on the house, their lender will have a second piece. Then an appraiser will look back over that information and those numbers to confirm that that price and that range is absolutely still correct based on where the market is at. Because if it's 3 months or 6 months later from when they did the appraisal, obviously the number is going to be very skewed. So they're giving us a secondary look, if you want to call it, for another appraiser to look over it. But we've worked all of this out with pricing. When you see our site, we've truncated all the pricing for all of this as well. So we're saving the consumer money. And in the last, I think, month or 60 days, some articles have come out about fair housing where it talks about the difference, racial biases of people who their homes were valued as less. So this is a very big deal. So if we can do the appraisal upfront and get rid of racial bias and actually just value the asset, and it's not determined by or pushed by or swayed by the lender trying to hit a number, how much better is that for the consumer? It's better if we can just value the asset, because like Teresa said, the asset's the asset. It is what it is. And then we have a secondary appraisal just to confirm the numbers. And again, please keep in mind, this is just what's on the table for the pilot with Fannie coming up.
Perfect. That was a long-winded explanation, Mark. I hope you're happy with it. Okay. All right. Teresa, Sheila, we are running a little late on time, so we're going to let you go, but thank you so much for sharing this with us, and your passion is very apparent, and I can't wait to take your course, and hopefully some of these members of the audience will join me.
Thank you.
Thank you.